Hello, my name is Mary Copeland, and welcome to The Road Ahead. Through a series of guests, we are going to help you navigate your own road ahead. We will help you prepare for your journey and your aging parents too. Because let's face it, who wants to find themselves in a crisis mode simply because they didn't have access to information? Together, we're going to help you achieve your best future. Today, my guest is Dr. Seif Fisher of Equilibrium Natural Health. And Dr. Fisher was introduced to natural medicine because a very close family member was diagnosed with late stage cancer, I guess I should say. And
Let me tell you a little bit about it.
well, it's his dad. Is that okay that I'm
Yep.
saying that? Okay.
Yep.
And his dad decided that he wanted to choose the natural path. And that was the choice he made for his health care. And because of that, it introduced natural medicine to Dr. Fisher. So he has a Bachelor of Science from Dixie State University, and his doctorate is from the nationally well-known U.S. College of
National College of Natural
Medicine. Okay. So Dr. Fisher is here with us today, and I am going to let him tell you just a little bit about himself before we start talking about the triangle of health. Welcome to the show. Good morning.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here, Mary. So one of the things that I do as a naturopathic doctor is we focus on natural medicine. And during my training initially in school, I had the opportunity to work with a doctor called Dr. SSL, or Dr. Steven Sandberg Lewis. And he's kind of a big name in the naturopathic world. He really focuses on digestive health. SIBO is kind of his specialty. And so I worked with him for a couple of years during my training in school. And we'll get into the details, of course, of kind of what that entails. But as a naturopathic doctor, I'm licensed in the state of Washington, and I treat patients of all ages. So.
Okay. And you said SIBO. What is SIBO?
So SIBO is a small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. It's kind of a big hullabaloo in the natural world nowadays. It's a digestive issue where people kind of refer to it as, so for example, IBS is a common name.
Irritable bowel syndrome.
Irritable bowel syndrome, where they don't really know where what the cause is and where the issue is coming from, and so that's kind of a cutting-edge research name for one of the causes of IBS. So I had the opportunity to be really specific and focus on a lot of digestive issues right at the beginning of my training.
Okay, so that leads us into the triangle of health, because I have read up on it based on information you handed out to us actually last week at The Road Ahead. And can you explain to our audience what the triangle of health is, because it's a big part of how you practice, I believe?
Absolutely. So it's really important to be able to look at a whole person, and the way I think of a whole person comes from that triangle of health. And there's three aspects to that triangle. One is going to be physical.
Okay.
One is going to be mental, emotional. And one is going to be biochemical, meaning like what's in your external environment, what's in your internal environment, whether that be chemicals and metals, things you're exposed to, or the foods and things like that you eat.
Okay. So in this triangle of health, can you give us an example so it's a little more understandable for the viewers?
Absolutely. And this is something that I feel really passionate about. I love sharing this with people because it's so important to understand in your own life, because in my experience, all symptoms come from one of these parts of the triangle. So for example, the physical aspect, let's give an example. So say, for example, somebody's in a car wreck and they hurt their leg, or they break a leg, or they have something going on. And so when you have something physically go wrong with you, the thing that's going to be most helpful for you is going to be an actual physical adjustment or some sort of physical interaction with the body. So that could be acupuncture, chiropractic, physical therapy, massage. There are a bunch of different systems that you can use to focus on the physical. And so by working on the physical, you're going to get the best results with the physical. Then there's going to be the biochemical component. So biochemistry, or the external experience and or the internal experience, might be something that you're eating. for example, maybe there's a food that you're allergic to, and or the way in which the body breaks down or doesn't break down that food changes the internal environment. Again, we live here in the Pacific Northwest where people, for example, work on submarines where there's nuclear radiation. Sometimes people don't do well with chemicals and metals, some sort of maybe like a pesticide exposure, those sorts of things.
Allergic reactions.
Allergic reactions. So that changes the biochemistry, whether outside or inside the body. And then the last one is personally my favorite, and that's going to be the mental emotional piece. And the mental emotional piece is how are we dealing with our emotions? How are we dealing with kind of our underlying subconscious brain, the programming that we had as a child? How do we deal with our personal emotions? Are we processing them both in the present and or the ones that are affecting us from the past? So maybe a stressful event, maybe in that car accident.
That car accident.
The car accident. So for example, maybe every time you get in the car now, you go back to that car accident and you've got that kind of trauma. You tense up. And your body, your physiology literally recreates what happened in the car, and it creates a lot of mental emotional trauma and issues, and you become dysfunctional.
So in that triangle of health, in the car accident example, you break a leg. So that's the physical part, and you have to figure out how to heal it. Is it something that can be reset? Does it have to have surgery? When you talk about the bio part, then if somebody isn't able to walk around the way they normally can, then what they're putting in their body, maybe their diet might have to change because they're not getting the physical activity they normally would have gotten. Then that might not help if they're gaining weight with the recovery. And then you've got the mental behavioral part of it too, the emotional part. How do they feel not only about maybe getting back into the car, but having that disability for a little while, and maybe nightmares from, I don't know what kind of accident it was, let's hope it wasn't a bad one, but all of those that play into this, and how the recovery of that person. Is that true?
Yeah, absolutely. And the one thing I'd like to add on top of that,
yes.
Oftentimes, for example, if it's a simple injury, right, so maybe it is you just broke a leg or you hurt a hip or pulled something, and you go in and you can get physical therapy done, and maybe that goes away, right? Oftentimes in simple cases, the pain will go away, for example.
Okay.
But in really difficult cases, which is mostly the types of people that I see, usually there's more than one side of the triangle that actually needs to be affected in order for the person to actually experience change. So sometimes maybe the mental emotional piece needs to be worked with in conjunction with the physical therapy in order to break the pattern that person now is in. Or sometimes they need all three, and that's where people tend to have long-term problems. And that's going to be where the complexity happens, where you really have to look at the whole person. You have to look at all three sides of the triangle for people in complex situations so they can get better.
And it sounds like really, no matter how, I don't know how you would say it in medical terminology, it could have been a break that wasn't so traumatic, but it doesn't matter how traumatic it was or not. It seems like in any situation, any patient that you work with, really the triangle should come into effect, and for the most part, all sides are usually used, but some might be used more than another. Is that correct?
Absolutely.
So, as a naturopathic doctor, and using the way that you like to practice this triangle of health, how is that compared to what people call their primary physician? What's the difference there between a naturopathic doctor and a primary physician?
Sure. So in the state of Washington, I am licensed as a primary care physician. Okay. And so through our training, we kind of focus as a primary care, the last 2 years of school, where traditional medical doctors might go and round with all kinds of different specialties, for example. Okay. We focus on just being primary care physicians. Well, we focus
being naturopathic
doctors. Our training is to be a primary care physician.
Okay.
That is our primary focus. Now, many of us will focus on specific things as we go out. So some of the additional training that I've had has me focus on additional things, but The difference from a traditional primary care physician is going to be in their training and kind of way that they look at the body versus the way that I might look at the body.
So they might only be looking at one side of the triangle, more of the physical for the most part.
Right.
They're not looking at the emotional side or necessarily the biochemical side.
Right.
Okay. So the naturopathic path, so to speak, that doctor, I hear that more and more these days. So is that a trend? Is that, you know what I'm saying?
Yep.
You want to elaborate on that a little bit? Because
Sure.
I don't think when my mom and dad were growing up that, there were naturopathic doctors as the norm, more like it is today.
Right. So I'll give you just a short history. In the early 1900s, there were naturopaths. And then in the new age of antibiotics, there was a lot of controversy, and a lot of those old naturopaths were kind of snuffed out to some degree, but they did hang around, right? People still did want natural options. And so there were a couple of naturopathic schools that managed to stay open. They've gained a lot of notoriety in the last 50 years as a lot of science and technology has caught up with the research, saying that there are a lot of good things that come out of the natural remedies and the natural therapies. And so as people have kind of progressed in recognizing that just doing antibiotics and just doing drugs, so to speak, it doesn't provide the highest level of quality of care. Naturopaths have been around for a long time. It's just kind of coming full circle, and that people want something else outside of just drugs and surgery.
So a naturopathic doctor, do they take insurances like other primary physicians?
So
And what do they cover?
it depends on the state. So for example, here in the state of Washington, as a primary care physician, they cover basic symptom reduction. So for example, I'll often see people with fatigue or maybe thyroid issues or hormone issues, those sorts of simple standard basics that they would typically go see their primary care. Insurance will typically cover that. Most major insurances cover naturopaths in the state of Washington, and there's some new rulings in the last few years that have really kind of opened that up. It's a state dependent piece, though. We're not technically licensed in all 50 states at this point.
Well, for our viewers, naturopathics are, so that's a good thing here in the state of Washington. We're almost out of time. I can't believe that topic already went by so fast. What would you like to tell our viewers as far as what we're discussing in this episode, because I am definitely going to invite you back? What would you like to share with them as a closing piece?
So as closing, what I'd like to really focus on is recognizing that there are other ways outside of just drugs and surgery that are options and available for everybody out there. There's a lot of stuff available on the internet, and Dr. Google tends to overwhelm a lot of people. And there are a lot of good providers out there that are open and have a lot of knowledge and experience with being able to use that whole triangle of health component, right? So I would say it's important to understand that if you go to a medical doctor, what you're looking for. If you're looking for basically symptom reduction, going to a traditional doctor is going to be what you're going to get. And that's great, as long as you know that that's what you're looking for. I often see people come talk to me and they get really frustrated with their medical doctor because they want to get well. And so the last thing that I would say is going to a traditional doctor is not usually going to provide wellness per se, because their training is what can we do to make sure you're not going to die and stay out of pain.
Right.
Okay? The only way you're going to find wellness is to be able to look at that triangle of health and really recognize that it's going to take a time to really work on wellness and to get well, to get off medications, to work in that direction. And still, even then, not everybody can do that. So that would be the difference. I really work on educating people to find a good experience when they go to their traditional physician, knowing that their goal is to find symptom reduction. If they're looking for something other than symptom reduction, then they want to go find like a naturopath or somebody else who's going to focus on getting them well.
Good advice. Thank you. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have today with Dr. Fisher, so I say we should definitely invite him back again. Thank you so much for spending a few minutes with us today. And as the publisher of Compass and Clock, we will always provide you with wonderful information like this. Have a great day. Bye-bye.